welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, you're very welcome. My name's Laura, and in this video, I'm going to be going through a quick and simple guide to help you revise for the UCAT. It's filled with all of the top tips that I used whenever I was revising for the UCAT to get a good score. And it's also filled with some things that I wish I had implemented earlier on in my revision for the UCAT. I hope you'll find these tips interesting and useful, and you can go away and get started revising well for the UCAT. Let me know any of your top tips in the comment section below, and make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already to keep up to date with all my new content and videos to help you succeed in the UCAT and the application process to a UK medical school. So here are my top tips for achieving a good score in the UCAT and how to revise well and prepare in advance for the UCAT exam so that you're not freaking out and panicked by the time that you get to your exam and you feel confident and ready to do your best. So top tip number 1. Stay calm and do not panic. It is so easy to freak out when you realise you've got to sit another exam, as I did. And whenever I realised that I'd never even heard of this exam and it was brand new and I wasn't going to have any help from teachers or tutors or anything, it really did get me a little bit nervous that I wasn't going to be able to be prepared and revise well for this exam that meant so much for me getting into a med school in the UK. So as silly as this top tip may sound, it is really important to stay calm and to remember that everyone else that is applying to med school in the UK that wants to go to a university that accepts UCAT will be in the same position as you. So you're definitely not alone when you realise that this exam requires a lot of preparation and you may already have a jam-packed summer like I did, and then have to realise that you'll factor in some time to prepare for this exam and do your very best. By keeping your stress levels and sort of panic under control and realise that yes, this is a difficult test, but you will have time to prepare and you will have resources available to you like these videos that I'm creating. So do not stress, keep it to a minimum, and it will really help you revise and prepare well. To feel confident and to go into that exam ready and prepared to sit it, do your best, these tips will hopefully keep your stress levels to a minimum and give you a better idea of what the UCAT is all about. So top tip number 2 now, and that is to get on to using online resources as soon as possible. Whenever I began preparing for the UCAT, I was using a book that I had been given by a friend, which was really good, so I thought, until I realised that the UCAT is all online and the format is really different to when you're using a book. So I highly recommend going on and finding some resources online, questions and examples to give you a better understanding of how the test is laid out and how it really will be sat on the day. If you would like any help or advice on what resources to go and use and check out, I've made a full video all about the best free resources to use online for preparing for the UCAT, and I'll put it in the link in the description below. So preparing online is super important. It gives you a really good understanding of what the real test will be like, what sort of environment it will be, and how the function of all the buttons and layout and keyboard shortcuts really work. It's a much more effective way of getting you used to how the things work on the test and will give you more confidence when you come to use the online resources like what the real test will be sat like. It'll give you a better understanding of what you don't know and may need to brush up on for the UCAT, like keyboard shortcuts or how to use the online calculator, or even things like the flag button. So definitely do get online as soon as possible. There are so many free resources to go and use, and they are all in that video that I made. So do check it out if you need any help on this. So tip number 3 then. Following on from tip number 2, it's really important to get used to the online way of doing the UCAT, and it's so important to also get used to the UCAT calculator. For me, I didn't even realise this was a thing until very close to the exam, and it was quite a different style of calculator than what I was used to using. I was used to just your average calculator with all of its functions, and it was really different from that. It has a very basic set of functions that you can use, and it is so tricky to sort of type into because you've got a lot of different methods of doing this, and it was just so different from what I was used to. So I highly recommend going online and working out how to use this calculator. It'll really help you speed up and not waste any time on sections that need the calculator if you can use this effectively. And I've made a full video on how to use the UCAT calculator, so do check it out if you're struggling with this and would like some extra advice. The earlier you get used to using this calculator, the easier and more confident you'll be with using it in the real exam. So definitely go and try and find the UCAT calculator questions that you'll be able to make use of, and do this as soon as you can for your revision. The UCAT calculator is used in a number of the sections of the UCAT, so it's really important to get used to and to be able to use quickly, easily, and confidently. On to tip 4 now. So tip number 4 is to get used to using keyboard shortcuts. I didn't use any keyboard shortcuts whenever I was preparing for the UCAT, and whenever I got into the exam, felt so underconfident to use these that I actually ended up dragging the mouse around the screen and wasting time doing so. It's really important that you get familiar with these keyboard shortcuts early on so that you are confident, you get used to them, and you're able to use these almost instinctively when you're in the exam. It'll really speed up your timings, and it will also help you feel less pressure when you're moving between questions and trying to get the calculator up and you're not shaking and all nervous trying to do this. Again, if you'd like any help on this, I have created a video all about the keyboard shortcuts, and it really does describe the ones that you really need to know, the ones that you can learn but aren't that important. But definitely check it out if you're struggling with this or would just like some more clarification. So tip number 5 then. So this one is to avoid rushing into trying to mimic the test environment and stressing yourself out by trying to time yourself doing questions. At the start of your UCAT preparation, you'll realise that these questions are difficult. They aren't the same as any style that you've potentially done before. Well, they definitely weren't for me anyway. And they are something that you need to accustom yourself to over time. Timing is important when you get to the real test, but it isn't important at the start. What's important is that you understand what the UCAT sections are actually asking you to learn and to understand to answer these questions well, and that timing will come in over your course of revision. So definitely don't put extra pressure on yourself at the start by trying to mimic timings and get into the test format. Simply just get used to the style of test, get used to the questions that they're asking, and just get a bit more confidence before you put a timer in on top of that. So tip number 6. This one is to be used once you've got used to how the questions are asked, what style the test is like, and when you've got a bit more confident with what the UCAT actually involves. So this tip is to get used to watching the timer on the on-screen format of the UCAT. This is totally different than using your phone timer or using like a stopwatch or your watch to check what the timing for each question is, and it can get quite off-putting if you're not used to seeing this counting down beside you as you're going through the test. You'll get used to this quite quickly, but it is important to bear in mind before going and sitting the UCAT, and I would say just getting used to this as soon as possible, because it's really useful to be able to glance at, to check your timings, to not get freaked out when you see the time get really low, like below a minute, and then have to panic and try and do extra things. It's nothing to worry about. It's simply there to know that it's a guide that you can glance at and briefly check where you are, what you feel like you're still left to do, and if you feel like you're on time. It's not something to get panicked and worked up over. It is simply that you understand that it's there, it's going to keep ticking down, and there's not much you can do about it. So do get used to this as soon as possible. So depending on what stage you are at revising or preparing for the UCAT, you may have already noticed that it is nothing like doing GCSEs or A-levels. It is so different and alien from it. It's online, it's done in a totally different test format. There's a timer, there's keyboard shortcuts and calculator differences. There's a lot to get used to. Not only that, but because of the timing, you are quite pressured to select answers and to move on, even if you haven't fully understood the question. It was really alien to me, and I was always taught that during exams you're meant to read a question and reread it and really understand what you're doing before just launching in and answering it. So learning that this was not really the right technique for the UCAT was quite a big learning curve for me. I soon realised that you can't spend forever on each question, and even if you're not entirely sure of what the answer should be, you can just guess what it is, flag it and move on. You shouldn't sit on it for a long time and get panicked and try and really work out the answer. The idea of the UCAT is to test how you work in a stressful environment under time pressure, and if you can keep focused and get the answers pumped out quite quickly. So if you're in the exam and you really can't feel like you're going to answer this question, if you're not understanding it or don't have time to reread the question, simply just guess an answer, flag it with the little flag icon at the bottom of the UCAT screen, and then move on to the next question. It will feel weird and strange and something that it really doesn't feel right, but at the same time, it is not worth sitting on for extra minutes and seconds because it's not going to get you any extra marks. So tip number 8, it's really important to be resilient when learning and preparing for the UCAT. It's a totally different style of learning. It's totally different format of test, and you don't have teachers and tutors there to help you out at any opportunity. So this is really proving that you're able to revise and learn yourself and to keep yourself motivated and on track to do well in this test. So make sure that you're not too hard on yourself when you're doing these. If you get things wrong and you're not sure what you're doing, don't worry about it. There is no point sitting on questions and feeling like you're stupid or you can't get it. You're meant to just move on and forget about it. At the end of the day, you'll have lots and lots of questions thrown at you at the UCAT. You will probably not have seen many of these before, but as long as you get used to the style of the questions, you understand that you've tried your best, and if you really can't get them, don't dwell on it, just move on, because dwelling on ones you've done wrong in the past is not going to help you get high marks. In fact, it's going to make you lose focus, lose concentration, and lose motivation overall. So tip number 9 is to mimic the test environment as early as possible. So once you've got used to how the format of the test is, what the sort of questions are like, and you've got used to timing yourself and getting confident with keyboard shortcuts, it's a really good idea to start mimicking the test environment to get you used to what it will be like on the day that you sit the test. This may include things like not having a drink with you, leaving your phone in another room, not allowing yourself to get up for lots of breaks, to sit down for a long period of time and do the actual full-length test. It takes 2 hours and a lot of concentration and motivation to keep you going. You won't really have time to get up to go to the bathroom or get yourself a drink, so it's really good to move all the distractions away, take the time that's needed and just do the test and see if you can last that length of time, concentrating, focused, and score well. You will do this a couple of times and realise that your scores aren't great, and that is totally perfectly fine. It will take time to get used to, and it's a good idea to do this sooner rather than later. You may even want to add in things like wearing noise cancelling headphones like you can in the exam, and getting a whiteboard and marker out to mimic all of the test environment features and to get you really used and ready to what you'll sit on the day. So tip number 10 is to read the question carefully. I know I did touch on this already and say that it's hard to read all the things that you need to and keep moving on as time is ticking down, but it is really important to read things effectively and carefully. So if you are reading a question, do not simply just flick through it and try and pick out the useful information as you start out. Do carefully read the questions and get used to the style that they're asking, the questions, the wording of it, how the examiners are looking for specific things. There would be nothing worse than getting into the test and realizing that you've worked out some amazing equations or elaborate formulas and things to then realize that you've actually misread the question and all you're working out is practically void. So do practice reading the questions carefully and getting used to this style of wording. This will really help in the real exam. It'll speed up time, give you confidence that you're going to read these things effectively, and would help with the score overall. So my top tip number 11 is to use mental maths as effectively as possible. Avoid using all of the little decimal numbers and all of the significant figures and try and round it to the smallest or easiest decimals to use for your mental maths to avoid relying heavily on the calculator and wasting time. This will give you confidence that you're getting the right answer and that you've got close to some of the multiple choice answers there, and it'll also save you a lot of valuable seconds so that you can answer more questions and get better overall score. At the end of the day, because it is multiple choice, you will only have to get close to an answer to realise that it's the correct answer. So using all of their extra decimal places and typing this into the calculator is not going to help with timings, and it's really not going to boost your score dramatically either. The mental maths they're asking will not be harder than GCSE, so do not worry about it. And the formulas and things that you might have to brush up on, again, aren't harder than GCSE level. So my top tip number 12 now, and this one is specifically aimed at the abstract reasoning section of the UCAT. This is to learn the memory techniques and styles that you'll need for the abstract reasoning section. And I've made a full video on this with all of the mnemonics and things that will help you learn really well to recognize patterns and pick up lots of points in the abstract reasoning section. My video will be in the description down below, so go check it out if you're struggling on this section. But this top tip is to definitely learn the mnemonics and little memory aids that will really help you systematically go through the abstract reasoning section. It was one I struggled with at the start, but over time saw massive improvements by using this top tip. So my top tip number 13 is specifically aimed then at the decision making and quantitative reasoning section of the UCAT. These ones involve a lot more maths than any other section, and you'll be using the calculator a lot. You also will have to recognize different conversions between things like percentages and decimals, as well as different formula. So definitely go brush up on this if you're not feeling that confident on these things. It's really important to be able to be confident and answer these questions well. So if you're needing help, do check out my specific videos for these sections. They are all in my UCAT playlist, and they will really speed up your timings and boost your scores in these sections. So this top tip is to definitely check for units, because examiners love to chuck in units everywhere they can, if it's in the question, if it's in the answer, and there'd be nothing worse than selecting the wrong one just because you missed out on the units. And then also learn the conversions between things like decimals, percentages, fractions. It's really important as well to speed up your timings, boost your scores, and make you feel good that you'll answer these questions well. So tip number 14 now, and this one is to go and practice your skim reading. Skim reading is not just speed reading through things, it's being able to effectively bring out information from something that you've just read. And whenever I started, I thought I was okay at reading. I thought my reading ability was pretty average, if not slightly better than average. But whenever I started reading these UCAT questions and realizing how time pressured I was, especially in the verbal reasoning section of the UCAT, I then realized that my reading ability was just not up to scratch for the UCAT. It took me a while to sort of work out ways to improve this, but by just reading simple things like Instagram or Facebook posts, or just some of your revision for school, and then trying to do this in as little time as possible, and then think about what you've just read, pull out the information that you can remember from it, and then use this to answer any questions or just simply move on with it, was a really effective way of me revising for the UCAT verbal reasoning section and speeding up my ability to skim read. It is so hard to pick out enough information from the verbal reasoning paragraphs that you'll be given, and you'll realize that when you start out, you're slow and you can't pick out the information, and it seems like a big task to just even get through the text and the amount of time that you might have to answer the questions as well. Do not panic, because in the real exam you won't be expected to read the entire thing. Skim reading will help you pull out the important pieces of information and make sure that when you read questions, when you're reading the answers, and when you're reading the big chunks of text as well, you're doing this cleverly, quickly, and you're able to get the good information that you'll need to answer these questions out of it. So my top tip is definitely go and skim read. Try and do this with newspaper articles, schoolwork, literally anything you can read as fast as you can, and then pull out the relevant and useful information from it. This will really help speed up your timings and also boost your scores in verbal reasoning and other sections of the UCAT. So finally, my 15th top tip is to enjoy your summer. This might sound really difficult after you've listened to all of the things that I've just talked about, but it is super important to not only focus on the UCAT, but also to focus on things that you enjoy doing as well. Your summer will be jam-packed, full of other amazing things, as well as the UCAT, so don't miss out going and visiting your friends and family, or missing out on good trips away or days out just because you think that you have to revise for the UCAT. I did not spend many hours a week revising for it, and I did okay to get into all my universities that I wanted to. So do not stress, do not put extra pressure and burden yourself with lots of extra practice when you actually don't need to do that. The UCAT is assessing different things that you can do, not just if you can answer a question and answer it in a certain time, but that you're able to mentally and physically cope with the length of time that you've got to do it for. It's not a sprint, it is a marathon. So set yourself little bits every day or every couple of days. Don't be too strict about it, and make it fun, because at the end of the day, you will need the motivation to carry you to the end. It is a long process, and the earlier you start, the better, but don't panic if your test is in a couple of weeks and you haven't really done much, because for me personally, I didn't leave enough time to do all of the things I needed to, as well as enjoy my jam-packed summer. So do not stress, do not panic. Do a little bit as often as you can, and do focus on extra things like skim reading, mental maths ability, and just get confident and prepared to sit this test. Don't spend hours in front of the computer screen instead of going out and enjoying your summer. Do a little bit every now and then, and do enjoy having time off and relaxing, because your summer is too important to miss just because of the UCAT. So I hope you are able to use some of those top tips, and if you haven't already checked out the rest of my channel for more advice and information in depth of the UCAT and all the individual sections, please go do so. I personally wish I had started everything a little bit earlier and I had given myself a little bit more time. However, it doesn't matter, because I managed to get a good score. I also managed to get into all the universities and get interviews and offers from them. So if I can do it, you can do it. And by implementing these top tips, I hope you will find that you will speed up and boost your scores. I'd love to hear from you, so if you've got any comments or questions, please put them in the comment section below, or go and check out my Instagram page for more advice and information. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye!